A paraplegic millionaire lived imprisoned by emptiness after losing everything in a tragic accident. When he no longer found reasons to continue, a beggar girl knocked on his door. The innocent force of that simple gesture unleashed encounters, secrets, and unexpected twists. And together they proved that even the deepest pain can give birth to a new purpose. The persistent knocking echoed through William Harrison's penthouse like an unwelcome intruder. 3 months had passed since the accident, and Bill, as everyone once called him, had grown accustomed to silence. The panoramic windows facing San Diego Bay offered a breathtaking view that no longer moved him. The 60-story luxury building, once a symbol of his success, now felt like an elegant prison. "Mr. Harrison?" a small voice called from the hallway. "I know you're in there." Bill maneuvered his wheelchair toward the entrance, his movements mechanical, devoid of purpose. At 58, his once commanding presence had diminished, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of grief. The gleaming hardwood floors, specially installed to accommodate his wheelchair, mockingly reflected the afternoon sunlight. When he finally opened the door, Bill found himself staring down at a girl no older than 9. Her worn clothes contrasted sharply with the opulent surroundings, yet something in her posture suggested dignity beyond her years. She held up a small container, steam still rising from its lid. "What do you want?" His voice, raspy from disuse, sounded foreign even to his own ears. "I brought you dinner," she said simply, extending the container. "Chicken soup. My foster mom taught me how to make it before I had to leave." Bill's first instinct was to close the door. He had no interest in charity, especially from a child who clearly needed it more than he did. Yet something in her determined brown eyes made him hesitate. "I don't need food," he said, his tone softer than intended. "I have everything delivered." "It's not about needing," she replied with surprising wisdom. "It's about wanting. And everybody wants homemade soup sometimes." Despite himself, Bill wheeled back slightly, creating space for her to enter. The girl stepped inside, her eyes widening at the expansive apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon, naval ships dotting the harbor below. "I'm Lily," she announced, placing the container on the kitchen counter. "Lily Rodriguez. How did you find me?" Bill asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Since donating most of his fortune to the Children's Future Foundation, he'd been careful to maintain his privacy. Lily busied herself finding a bowl in his immaculate kitchen. "Your picture is in Ms. Palmer's office at the center, and I saw your address on some papers when she stepped out to yell at Bobby for running in the hallway." Bill watched as she confidently opened his microwave, reheating the soup before placing it before him. "You shouldn't be here. Does anyone know where you are?" Lily shrugged, the gesture somehow both childlike and ancient. "Nobody really keeps track anymore. I go to the center during the day, but at night..." Her voice trailed off. The implication hung in the air between them. Bill felt a flicker of concern, the first genuine emotion he'd experienced in months. "Where do you stay at night?" "Different places. There's a shelter on Broadway, but they're always full. Sometimes Mrs. Garcia lets me sleep in her storage room if it's raining." Lily spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than her homelessness. Bill stared at the steaming soup, the aroma awakening memories he'd tried to suppress. Family dinners, laughter, his daughter Amanda setting the table while his wife Catherine teased him about working too late. The familiar pressure built in his chest. "So you should go," he said abruptly. "Take the soup with you." Lily stood her ground. "You need to eat first. You look too skinny." The unexpected criticism startled a harsh laugh from him. "I don't recall asking for your opinion." "You don't have to ask. Some things are just obvious." She pushed the spoon toward him. "Try it. If you hate it, I'll leave." Against his better judgment, Bill took a spoonful. The simple flavors transported him instantly to his childhood in Ohio, before business deals and boardrooms, before success and loss had defined his existence. "It's good," he admitted reluctantly. Lily beamed, revealing a missing front tooth. "My specialty. I can make 3 other things too. Grilled cheese, oatmeal, and peanut butter sandwiches." "Quite the accomplished chef," Bill commented dryly, but continued eating. As he finished the soup, Bill noticed the girl studying the framed photos he hadn't been able to put away. Catherine with her gardening awards, Amanda in her graduation cap and gown. "Is that your daughter?" Lily asked, pointing to Amanda's picture. Bill's hands tightened on his wheelchair armrests. "Yes, I knew her," Lily said quietly. "She came to our school for the Reading Buddies program. She read me Charlotte's Web and didn't even get mad when I cried at the end." Bill stared at the child, momentarily speechless. Amanda had volunteered at several schools, something he'd been too busy to properly appreciate when she was alive. The connection to this girl felt like a cruel joke from the universe. "You must be mistaken," he said finally. "That was years ago." 2 years and 3 months ago, Lily corrected. "I remember because it was right before my mom got sick." She traced the frame's edge with one small finger. "She was nice. She said I was smart and could be anything I wanted." Bill felt the familiar crushing weight of grief, but now it carried a new dimension. Here stood a living connection to Amanda, a child who remembered her kindness. "It's getting late," he said, glancing at the darkening sky outside. The thought of this child wandering San Diego's streets at night troubled him more than he cared to admit. "I can come back tomorrow," Lily stated, not a question but a declaration. "I'll bring my special grilled cheese." "That's not necessary," Bill began, but Lily was already heading toward the door. 6 o'clock, she called over her shoulder. "Don't make other plans." Before Bill could protest further, she was gone, leaving only the empty soup container as evidence of her visit. For the first time in months, the crushing silence of his apartment felt noticeable rather than comforting. He wheeled himself to the window, watching as Lily's small form emerged from the building's main entrance far below. She paused on the sidewalk, looking up toward his penthouse, then gave a determined wave before disappearing into the evening crowd. Bill remained at the window long after she vanished, his reflection superimposed over the twinkling lights of the city. His hand reached unconsciously for his phone, scrolling to a contact he hadn't used in months. "Marcus," he said when the call connected, "it's Bill Harrison." "Mr. H." The surprise in his former security chief's voice was evident. "Everything okay?" "I need information on a child, Lily Rodriguez, approximately 9 years old, attends programs at Children's Future Foundation." Bill's voice took on the authoritative tone that had once commanded boardrooms. "And I need to know exactly what's happening with the Foundation's operations." Discreetly. After ending the call, Bill wheeled himself to his desk, opening his laptop for the first time since returning from rehabilitation. The screen illuminated his face as his fingers hovered over the keyboard momentarily before beginning to type. The Children's Future Foundation website appeared, showcasing smiling faces of children helped by their programs. Bill navigated to the financial reports section, his business instincts awakening as he scanned the numbers. Something didn't add up. Outside, the San Diego night pulsed with life and possibility. Inside, William Harrison found himself doing something unexpected, making plans for tomorrow. True to her word, Lily appeared at 6 o'clock the following evening, a paper bag clutched to her chest. Bill had spent the day reviewing the Foundation's financial statements, his analytical mind flagging inconsistencies that grew more troubling with each document he examined. When the doorbell rang, he almost welcomed the interruption. "You're still here," Lily observed as she entered, as if she'd half expected him to vanish. "Where else would I be?" Bill asked, gesturing to his wheelchair. "People disappear all the time," she replied, with the simple wisdom of someone who had experienced too many abandonments, even when they stay in the same place. Bill found himself without a ready response, uncomfortably aware of how accurately her words described his existence these past months. Lily unpacked her bag, revealing 2 carefully wrapped sandwiches. "I use 3 kinds of cheese," she explained, arranging them on plates she confidently retrieved from his kitchen. "The secret is putting mayo on the outside before you grill it." "Where did you learn to cook?" Bill asked, accepting the golden brown sandwich. "My mum taught me the basics. Then I watched cooking shows at the library." Lily settled onto a bar stool at the kitchen island. "They let you stay all day if you're quiet and don't cause trouble?" As they ate, Bill studied her more carefully than he had the previous day. Despite her worn clothes, Lily was clean, her hair neatly braided. She ate with deliberate slowness, savoring each bite. He recognized the habit of someone accustomed to making food last. "How long have you been coming to the Foundation's center?" he asked casually. "Since they opened the new building downtown. Before that, I went to the old one by the park." She swung her legs, feet not reaching the floor. Ms. Palmer doesn't like me much, though. Says I ask too many questions. Bill's interest sharpened. What kind of questions? Like why they close the computer lab but keep getting money for it, or why they stopped the weekend meals program. Lily shrugged. Grown-up stuff, I guess. The information aligned with discrepancies Bill had noted in the Foundation's reports. On paper, these programs were still fully operational and well-funded. Do you go to school, Lily? She nodded. Franklin Elementary. I'm good at math, the best in my class. Ms. Wilson gives me special problems because I finish early. Pride briefly illuminated her face. I like numbers. They always make sense, even when nothing else does. Bill wheeled over to his desk and returned with a notepad. Try this one, he said, writing down an algebra problem well beyond elementary-level curriculum. Lily studied it, her brow furrowing in concentration. She borrowed his pen and solved it methodically, talking through her process aloud. Bill watched in astonishment as she worked through the equation flawlessly, using techniques he knew weren't taught until at least 7th grade. Where did you learn algebraic substitution? He asked when she finished. Is that what it's called? I figured it out from a high school textbook I found in the library donation bin. She looked up anxiously. Did I do it wrong? No, Bill said softly. You did it perfectly. The doorbell interrupted their impromptu math lesson. Bill frowned, unaccustomed to visitors. Through the security monitor, he recognized Marcus Johnson's broad shoulders and close-cropped hair. Come in, Bill called, unlocking the door remotely. Marcus entered, his athletic frame moving with the disciplined grace that had made him a Paralympic gold medalist before he became the building's head of security. His eyebrows rose slightly at the sight of Lily. Mr. Harrison, I have that information you requested, he said carefully. Lily, would you mind watching television for a few minutes? Bill suggested, nodding toward the living room. You're going to talk about me, she stated matter-of-factly. That's okay. People always do. Nevertheless, she obediently retreated to the sofa and turned on the large screen, finding a documentary about marine biology. Marcus waited until she was out of earshot before speaking. The situation is worse than we thought. The Foundation is showing serious financial discrepancies. Programs listed as active that have been shut down, staff on payroll who don't exist, and several unexplained transfers to offshore accounts. Victoria Palmer. Marcus nodded. She appears to be at the center of it, but she's not acting alone. The board has been negligent at best, complicit at worst. Bill's jaw tightened. And the girl? Lily Rodriguez, age 9. Mother passed from cancer 2 years ago. Father unknown. No other family stepped forward, so she entered the foster system. Marcus hesitated. She's been classified as a runaway for the past 6 months, though she still attends school sporadically. Teachers report exceptional academic potential, particularly in mathematics. Bill glanced toward Lily, now absorbed in footage of dolphins. Where has she been staying? Various shelters, occasionally with a woman named Rosa Garcia, who runs a bakery downtown, mostly. Marcus trailed off. On the streets, Bill finished grimly. The police have picked her up twice, but she was returned to her foster home both times and promptly disappeared again. The system is overwhelmed. One runaway 9-year-old isn't their priority, especially one who stays out of trouble and shows up for school often enough to avoid truancy officers. Bill's fingers drummed against his wheelchair armrest, a habit from his executive days when formulating strategies. What's her connection to the Foundation? She attends their after-school program, gets their meal service when it's operating. There's more. She was part of a pilot mathematics enrichment program that was cut last year due to budget constraints, despite showing remarkable aptitude. Bill felt a surge of anger, the first strong emotion beyond grief he'd experienced in months. Catherine had always accused him of having an overdeveloped sense of justice. It's why you're a better businessman than most, she'd say. You actually believe in playing fair. What are you thinking, Mr. H? Marcus asked, recognizing the expression. I'm thinking it's time to make some calls, Bill replied. Starting with my attorney. Later, after Marcus departed with a list of tasks and Lily had fallen asleep watching television, Bill found himself studying her small form curled on his expensive leather sofa. The child had brought her entire world in a tattered backpack, a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web with Amanda's handwriting inside the cover. To Lily, stories help us imagine better worlds before we build them. Keep reading. The inscription hit Bill like a physical blow. Amanda had always been the idealist in the family, believing in possibility where he saw only obstacles to overcome. "You calculate risk, Dad," she once told him. "I calculate hope. Between us, we usually get it right." Without conscious decision, Bill picked up his phone and dialed another number from his past. "Bill?" The surprise in Sarah Bennett's voice matched Marcus's earlier. "Is everything all right?" "I need a favor, Sarah," he said quietly, "and it can't wait until morning." By the time Dr. Bennett arrived, Bill had made up the guest bedroom and transferred Lily there without waking her. The physiotherapist who had guided his rehabilitation arrived with medical supplies and no questions, her professionalism intact despite their complicated history. "She's malnourished but otherwise healthy," Sarah reported after examining the sleeping child. "Mild anemia, some vitamin deficiencies, nothing that proper nutrition won't fix." She fixed Bill with a penetrating look. "Want to tell me what's going on?" Bill hesitated, then related the events of the past 2 days, including his discoveries about the foundation. "I can't send her back out there, Sarah, not tonight. Maybe not ever. You know there are legal channels, Bill. You can't just keep a child who shows up at your door." "I know." His voice hardened with resolve. "But I can make sure she's safe while I deal with the foundation. Catherine and Amanda would have wanted that." Sarah's expression softened at the mention of his family. "I'll help however I can, starting with a proper medical workup tomorrow. She should see a pediatrician." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate for the first step back toward human connection. After Sarah left, Bill wheeled himself to the window. The lights of San Diego sparkled below, countless lives intersecting in ways no business algorithm could predict. For the first time since the accident, he found himself wondering what tomorrow might bring. By the end of April, a rhythm had formed in the penthouse that once knew only silence. Lily attended Franklin Elementary during the day, dropped off and picked up by Marcus's nephew who worked as a rideshare driver. Afternoons found her at Bill's dining table, solving increasingly complex mathematics problems while he made calls and studied documents. The Foundation's board had not taken kindly to Bill's inquiries. Victoria Palmer had even attempted to block Lily's temporary emergency placement with Bill, approved by a sympathetic judge who recognized the unusual circumstances. But William Harrison had not built a technology empire by backing down from challenges. His attorney was systematically building a case against the Foundation's leadership while Bill developed plans for something new. "Mr. H," Lily burst through the door, her backpack bouncing. "Look what I got on my math test." She thrust a paper toward him, her face radiant with pride. A red 100% adorned the top, alongside a handwritten note from her teacher, suggesting advanced placement. "Outstanding," Bill said, feeling a warmth that had become increasingly familiar. "I think this calls for celebration ice cream." "Before dinner?" Lily's eyes widened at this violation of established routine. "Sometimes rules need reconsideration in light of exceptional circumstances," Bill replied, the formal phrasing making Lily giggle. As they enjoyed their impromptu treat on the balcony overlooking the harbor, Lily pointed toward the boardwalk below. "There's going to be a festival this weekend, for Cinco de Mayo." Bill nodded absently, his mind still on Foundation documents. "My mom used to take me every year," Lily continued. "There's music and dancing and these little fried dough things with cinnamon." Bill recognized the wistfulness in her voice. "Churros," he supplied. "Your mother was Mexican?" "Mexican-American, born in San Diego, but her parents came from Oaxaca." Lily traced patterns in her melting ice cream. "She taught me some Spanish, but I'm forgetting it now. Nobody to practice with." Bill studied her downturned face, recognizing the grief that mirrored his own. "We could go," he said suddenly. "To the festival." Lily's head snapped up. "Really? But you never leave the apartment except for doctor appointments." "I leave for physical therapy too," he corrected with mock seriousness. "That's entirely different from doctor appointments." Her answering smile was worth the anxiety, the prospect of navigating crowds in his wheelchair induced. Bill hadn't ventured into such a public setting since the accident, preferring the controlled environments of medical facilities and his home. Saturday dawned clear and warm, a perfect San Diego spring day. Bill found himself actually looking forward to the outing as Marcus helped him into the specially modified van. Lily chattered excitedly from the back seat, pointing out landmarks as they drove downtown. The boardwalk had been transformed into a riot of color and sound. Vendors lined the pathways selling crafts, food and drinks. Musicians performed on small stages throughout the area, while dancers in traditional costumes performed in a central plaza. Bill was surprised to find the event more accessible than he'd feared. Most areas had ramp access, and people respectfully made way for his wheelchair. Still, he couldn't help noticing the obstacles that had never registered before the accident. A single step here, a too narrow passage there, barriers invisible to the able-bodied world. "Bill, over here!" A familiar voice called from a nearby food stand. Sarah Bennett waved, her casual weekend attire a contrast to her usual professional appearance. "You didn't mention you were coming," Bill said as she approached. "Community event," Sarah shrugged, "plus the best tamales in Southern California." She smiled at Lily. "Having fun?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, a churro clutched in each hand. "They have dancers from Oaxaca like where my grandparents were from. Then we definitely need to watch them," Sarah said. "Mind if I join you?" The three made their way to the central plaza, where performers were preparing for the next show. As they found a spot at the edge of the crowd with good wheelchair visibility, Bill noticed a group of people in wheelchairs being positioned near the front. "What's happening there?" he asked Sarah. "The adaptive dance troupe," she explained. "They perform with the traditional dancers. It's a beautiful integration of abilities." Bill watched transfixed as the performance began. The wheelchair dancers moved with grace and precision, their upper bodies creating fluid patterns that complemented the footwork of the standing dancers. The two groups wove together in a celebration of movement that transcended physical limitation. "They're like you," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Before Bill could respond, a voice called from beside the performance area. "Ladies and gentlemen, we invite members of our community to join in our celebratory dance." Several people stepped forward, encouraged by friends. To Bill's shock, a dancer approached his wheelchair. "Would you honor us by joining?" she asked with a respectful bow. "Oh, I couldn't possibly," Bill began. "He'd love to," Sarah interrupted, ignoring his glare. "I'll help," Lily volunteered, pushing his wheelchair forward before he could object further. Suddenly, Bill found himself in the circle of dancers. A young man in a wheelchair demonstrated simple movements, turns, hand gestures, rhythmic patterns that could be performed from a seated position. "Just follow along," the dancer encouraged. "Feel the music." At first, Bill moved mechanically, hyper-aware of watching eyes. But gradually something shifted. The music seeped into his consciousness, the joyful rhythms connecting to memories of dancing with Catherine at charity galas, of Amanda's ballet recitals, of family celebrations. He began to move more freely, discovering new ways his body could express what his legs could not. The crowd cheered as the adaptive dancers led their community partners through a simplified routine. Bill caught glimpses of Lily watching from the sidelines, her face alight with joy, and Sarah nodding encouragement. When the dance ended, applause erupted around them. Bill was surprised to find himself breathless and smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in months. "That was amazing," Lily exclaimed as she reclaimed her position behind his wheelchair. "You were so good." "I wouldn't go that far," Bill said, but without his usual self-deprecation. "You've got natural rhythm," the dance troupe leader commented, handing Bill a card. "We practice Tuesday evenings if you're interested." Bill pocketed the card automatically, though he had no intention of pursuing such an activity. Yet as they continued through the festival, the experience lingered, a reminder that joy could still exist in this altered life. Later, as they shared a meal at an outdoor cafe, Sarah regarded him thoughtfully. "Something's different about you today." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Besides making a spectacle of myself in public?" "Yes," she said seriously. "You're present. You're here not just physically, but mentally. It's good to see." Bill glanced at Lily, who was practicing Spanish with their waiter. "She makes it hard to stay disconnected," he admitted, "even when I try." "Children have that quality," Sarah agreed. "But it's more than that. You're engaging with the world again." Before Bill could respond, Lily returned to the table clutching a flyer. "Look, the community center is having a fundraiser to build a new accessible playground. We should help." Bill examined the flyer, noting that the location was near Franklin Elementary. "Perhaps we could make a donation," he suggested. "No, we should help build it," Lily insisted. The flyer says they need volunteers for a community workday. She pointed to an image of diverse community members working together on construction. Even people in wheelchairs are helping with painting and stuff. Bill opened his mouth to refuse, then paused, seeing the eagerness in Lily's expression. "We'll consider it," he said finally. Sarah's knowing smile irritated and comforted him simultaneously. As the festival wound down and evening approached, Bill found himself reluctant to return to the penthouse. "Should we walk along the harbor before heading home?" he suggested, surprising himself with the impulse. Lily's enthusiastic agreement settled the matter. Sarah excused herself for a prior commitment, but not before giving Bill's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Keep moving forward," she murmured. "It suits you." The sunset painted the water in brilliant oranges and pinks as they made their way along the accessible boardwalk. Street performers entertained small crowds, and the lights of anchored boats twinkled in the gathering dusk. "This was my mum's favorite time of day," Lily said quietly. "She called it the magic hour when everything looks more beautiful than it really is." Bill considered this. Or perhaps it reveals the beauty that's always there, just hidden by the harsh light of midday. Lily pondered this philosophical adjustment. "Maybe," she conceded. "Either way, I'm glad we came today." "So am I," Bill realized with mild surprise. The outing had exhausted him physically, but awakened something that had been dormant since the accident. As they turned toward where Marcus waited with the van, Bill noticed Lily waving to someone. An elderly woman approached, wiping her hands on a baker's apron. "Lily, mi pequeña matematica." The woman embraced the child, then looked questioningly at Bill. "Mrs. Garcia, this is Mr. Harrison," Lily introduced. "He's letting me stay with him for now. Mr. Harrison, this is Mrs. Garcia from the bakery I told you about." Rosa Garcia studied Bill with undisguised scrutiny. "You are taking good care of our Lily?" "I'm trying," Bill answered honestly. "Though I suspect she's taking better care of me." The woman's weathered face softened. "This is true, yes? She has special gift for healing hearts." She turned to Lily. "You come visit the bakery soon, bring your friend. I teach him how real pan dulce should taste." After promising to visit, they continued to the van. As Marcus helped secure Bill's wheelchair, Lily gazed back at the festival lights. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For dancing, for coming outside, for trying." Her small hand found his. "My mom always said trying is the bravest thing people can do." Bill squeezed her fingers gently, thinking that perhaps Lily's mother had been wiser than his army of executive coaches and leadership consultants. "Your mother sounds like she was an extraordinary woman." "She was," Lily agreed, "like your wife and daughter were too, right?" The question would have paralyzed him weeks ago. Now Bill found himself nodding. "Yes, extraordinary in every way." As they drove home through the twinkling cityscape, Bill realized he was making plans again, not just for the Foundation investigation, but for next week, next month. Small plans, human-sized rather than corporate-scaled, but plans nonetheless. And for the first time since the accident, tomorrow didn't seem like just another day to endure. The Children's Future Foundation headquarters occupied a sleek building in downtown San Diego, its glass facade emblazoned with inspirational quotes about youth and potential. Bill surveyed it from the passenger seat of Marcus's SUV, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. "Are you sure about this, Mr. H?" Marcus asked, glancing at the building entrance where Victoria Palmer greeted board members arriving for the emergency meeting. "Absolutely." Bill straightened his tie, a business ritual he hadn't performed in months. Time to remember how to be William Harrison again. 4 weeks had passed since the Cinco de Mayo festival, weeks filled with attorney meetings, financial investigations, and quiet moments with Lily that had gradually reawakened his will to engage with the world. The temporary guardianship arrangement had been extended, giving Bill time to address both the Foundation's corruption and Lily's precarious legal status. Marcus retrieved Bill's wheelchair and helped him into it with practiced efficiency. As they approached the building, Bill noted the accessible entrance was around the side, away from the impressive main stairs, an architectural afterthought that spoke volumes. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition as they entered the lobby. "Mr. Harrison, we weren't expecting—" "I'm here for the board meeting," Bill interrupted smoothly. "Please don't trouble yourself to announce me." Before she could respond, Bill wheeled himself toward the elevator, Marcus following like the security professional he'd once been. They rode to the top floor in silence. The boardroom fell quiet as Bill entered. Victoria Palmer froze mid-sentence, her professionally composed face showing momentary shock before recovering. "Mr. Harrison," she said, voice honeyed with false warmth. "What an unexpected pleasure. We were just discussing the Foundation's strategic direction." "I'm sure you were," Bill replied, positioning his wheelchair at the head of the table, his usual spot when he'd established the Foundation. "Please continue. I'm particularly interested in the strategic decision to close the weekend meal program while continuing to report it as operational." The silence thickened. Board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "There have been some necessary programmatic adjustments," Victoria said carefully. "Temporary measures to ensure long-term sustainability." "Fascinating." Bill opened a leather portfolio and extracted a document. "Because my review suggests these adjustments coincide with unusual transfers to offshore accounts." He slid the paper toward the center of the table. "Perhaps you could explain these strategic anomalies." What followed was a masterclass in corporate confrontation. Bill had built his reputation on thorough preparation and uncompromising integrity. For 2 hours, he methodically presented evidence of financial mismanagement, program cuts disguised as efficiency measures, and systematically diverted funds. "The authorities have been provided with this information," Bill concluded, his voice steady despite his fatigue. "But I wanted to give this board the opportunity to do the right thing before legal proceedings begin. Resignations, full cooperation with investigators, and immediate restoration of all programs to the children who depend on them." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "You abandoned this foundation for months. You have no right to waltz back in and make accusations." "I funded this foundation," Bill corrected coldly. "And while I was recovering from injuries that left me paralyzed, you exploited my absence to steal from children who have nothing. That ends today." One by one, board members began to gather their things, mumbling about consulting attorneys and prior commitments. Victoria remained, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "You've made a serious mistake," she hissed when the room had emptied. "You know nothing about running a children's services organization. You'll destroy everything we've built." "What you've built is a facade," Bill replied. "What I intend to build is something real." Later, as Marcus drove them back to the penthouse, Bill's phone rang continuously with calls from board members suddenly eager to cooperate. He ignored them, exhaustion settling into his bones. The confrontation had taken more out of him than he'd anticipated. "What happens now?" Marcus asked as they pulled into the building's underground garage. Bill gazed out the window at nothing in particular. "Now we rebuild. A new foundation, transparent and actually focused on the children. No more vanity projects or administrative bloat." Marcus nodded approvingly. "You'll need a team you can trust." "I'm working on that," Bill said, thinking of the calls he'd made to former colleagues known for their integrity. "Starting with a new interim director who arrives tomorrow." When they reached the penthouse, they found Lily and Sarah engaged in an intense game of chess on the balcony. The sight of them, the child's face scrunched in concentration, Sarah's patient guidance, eased something in Bill's chest. "How did the showdown go?" Sarah asked, while Lily put away the chess pieces. "As expected. Denial, then anger, then the beginnings of bargaining." Bill accepted the glass of water Lily brought him. "Thank you. How was school today?" "Miss Wilson says I can join the advanced math class next year if I keep my grades up," Lily reported proudly. "And I got picked for the science fair team." "Excellent news." Bill smiled, though fatigue made it difficult. "We should celebrate." Sarah gave him a knowing look. "After you rest, you're pale and your hands are shaking." Bill wanted to deny it, but the physical toll of the day was undeniable. Since beginning more aggressive physical therapy and ventures outside the apartment, he'd gained strength, but emotional confrontation still drained him completely. "Just a short rest," he conceded, allowing Lily to help push his wheelchair toward the bedroom. "I'll wake you for dinner," she promised, her small face serious with responsibility. Bill slept deeply, waking disoriented as evening shadows filled his room. The sound of laughter drew him to the kitchen, where he found Lily and Sarah preparing dinner, flour dusting both their faces. "We're making empanadas," Lily announced. "Mrs. Garcia gave me her special recipe." "I'm just the assistant," Sarah added, wiping flour from her cheek. "The chef here is very demanding." You have to fold them exactly right or the filling leaks out, Lily explained seriously. Want to help? The domestic scene struck Bill with unexpected force. How long had it been since his kitchen had contained laughter? Catherine had loved to cook, often recruiting Amanda and him as reluctant assistants. Their disasters had become family legends, sources of teasing for years afterward. I'm not sure I'd be much help, Bill said, indicating his wheelchair. We lowered the counter. Lily pointed to where they'd adjusted the height of the workspace by placing cutting boards on boxes. See? Now you can reach. The thoughtful accommodation touched him deeply. Bill rolled up his sleeves and joined them at the makeshift workstation, following Lily's exacting instructions for crimping empanada edges. Over dinner, Bill outlined his plans for the new foundation. I'm thinking of calling it New Horizons, he said, with programs specifically designed around educational support, particularly in STEM fields. Like a special math program? Lily asked, eyes bright with interest. Exactly. And science, technology, engineering, subjects that open doors to future opportunities. Bill hesitated, then added, I'd like your input on what would be most helpful for kids in your situation. Lily considered this seriously. A safe place to stay is the most important thing, she said finally. Even smart kids can't think about school when they're worried about where they'll sleep. Her simple observation cut to the heart of the matter. Bill exchanged glances with Sarah, who nodded slightly in agreement. Then housing support will be our foundation, Bill said. We'll build the educational programs around that core security. After dinner, as Sarah prepared to leave, she pulled Bill aside. You're doing better than I expected after today's confrontation, she observed. A month ago, this would have set you back significantly. A month ago, I didn't have the right motivation, Bill replied, glancing toward Lily, who was contentedly reading on the sofa. Sarah smiled. The hearing is next week? Bill nodded, tension returning to his shoulders. Wednesday. The judge will review the extended guardianship arrangement. One step at a time, Sarah reminded him, the phrase familiar from their physical therapy sessions, just like rehabilitation. After she left, Bill joined Lily in the living room. What are you reading? A book about Katherine Johnson. She was a mathematician for NASA, Lily explained, showing him the cover. She calculated the paths for spaceships before computers were good enough. Impressive, Bill said, genuinely interested. Do you think you might want to work for NASA someday? Lily shrugged. Maybe. Or I could start my own company like you did. She hesitated, then asked, What was your company like? Bill realized they'd never really discussed his previous life. It started small, just me writing code in my apartment during college. Then it grew, solving problems that other companies couldn't figure out. What kind of problems? Ways to make computers talk to each other more efficiently. Methods to organize massive amounts of information so people could find what they needed instantly. Bill smiled at the memory of those early, exhilarating days. Mostly, we tried to make complicated things simple. That's what good math does too, Lily observed. Makes complicated things simple once you understand the pattern. Exactly right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Lily spoke again. There's something I need to tell you, she said, suddenly serious. About tomorrow. What about tomorrow? A lady from social services is coming to my school to talk to me. Lily fidgeted with her book cover. Ms. Wilson told me after class. They found some of my relatives. Bill felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath him. Relatives? What relatives? I don't know. Someone from my dad's side, I think. I never met my dad. Lily's voice was small. Will I have to go live with them? Bill forced himself to breathe evenly, to keep his expression neutral despite the sudden dread flooding his system. I don't know yet, he answered honestly. But we'll figure it out together, okay? No decisions will be made without considering what's best for you. Lily nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Can I still help with the new foundation even if I have to go away? Lily, Bill said firmly, no matter what happens, you will always have a place in my life and in the foundation. That's a promise. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Bill made several urgent calls. To his attorney, to the social worker assigned to Lily's case, to a private investigator he trusted. By midnight, he had the basic information. A second cousin of Lily's father had come forward after seeing a human interest story about the foundation scandal that mentioned her by name. Bill stared out at the San Diego skyline, the city lights reflecting on the dark harbor waters. The thought of losing Lily to unknown relatives twisted something deep in his chest. Yet he knew firsthand the importance of family connections, of biological ties that couldn't simply be dismissed. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Background check on the Rodriguez relatives in progress. Preliminary findings concerning. We'll have full report by morning. Bill closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility press down upon him. 4 months ago, he'd been ready to surrender to grief, to slip away from a life that seemed emptied of meaning. Now he found himself preparing to fight, not for business advantage or market share, but for a child who had somehow become essential to his reclaimed existence. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to save Lily, she had somehow saved him instead. The woman who claimed to be Lily's relative had the same dark eyes, but none of the warmth. Janet Vega sat stiffly in Bill's living room, her gaze calculating as it moved from the expensive furnishings to Bill himself. As I was saying, Mr. Harrison, we're simply looking to reconnect with family. Her voice held a practiced sincerity that didn't reach her eyes. Carlos would have wanted his daughter to know her relatives. Cousin, Bill corrected mildly. You're Lily's second cousin once removed, according to the family tree your attorney provided. Janet's smile tightened. Family is family, Mr. Harrison. Blood matters. Beside her, a man Bill assumed was her husband nodded emphatically. Robert Vega had said little during the meeting, content to let his wife lead the conversation. His only contributions had been questions about Bill's company and vague mentions of financial arrangements that might be made. I understand you've never actually met Lily before, Bill noted, consulting the folder on his lap. In fact, there's no record of you attempting to contact her after her mother's illness, despite the public notices placed by social services. We only recently discovered her existence, Janet insisted. Carlos wasn't close with our branch of the family. When we saw the article about that horrible foundation situation and recognized the name Rodriguez, we did some digging. Bill nodded thoughtfully. Though Marcus's background check had already revealed their sudden interest, coincided precisely with the media coverage of Bill's wealth and connection to Lily. And now you want custody? We want what's best for the child, Janet replied smoothly. A stable home with actual relatives seems preferable to temporary arrangements, however well-intentioned. The door opened before Bill could respond, and Lily entered with Sarah, returning from a scheduled outing designed to keep her away during the initial meeting with the Vegas. Lily, Bill called, relieved by the interruption. Come meet Mrs. and Mr. Vega. They're distant relatives of your father. Lily approached cautiously, studying the visitors with the careful assessment of a child who had learned to read adults quickly. Hello, she said politely, but made no move to accept Janet's outstretched arms. Look at you, Janet exclaimed with manufactured enthusiasm. You have the Rodriguez eyes, just like Carlos. I'm your Aunt Janet, and this is Uncle Robert. Second cousin, Lily corrected, echoing Bill's earlier statement. Once removed. Janet's smile faltered momentarily before recovering. Smart girl. You must get that from your father's side. The Rodriguez family has always been good with details. The awkward conversation continued through an uncomfortable lunch. Bill observed how the Vegas alternated between excessive interest in Lily and thinly veiled inquiries about his financial situation. More telling was their complete lack of questions about Lily's interests, schoolwork, or emotional well-being. We have a lovely spare room all ready for you, Janet was saying as they finished dessert, right next to our home gym. Robert here is a fitness buff. I have school, Lily pointed out, and the science fair team and my math club. Oh, there are good schools in Phoenix too, Janet assured her. We'll find something suitable. Bill caught the flash of panic in Lily's eyes at the mention of moving to Arizona. Perhaps this is a conversation for another time, he suggested. Lily has had enough disruption recently. After the Vegas departed with promises to be in touch through their attorney, Lily retreated to her room, unusually quiet. Bill found her an hour later, methodically packing her few belongings into her backpack. What are you doing? He asked, though the answer was painfully obvious. Getting ready. Her voice was flat, resigned. Social services says I have to have a family meeting with them tomorrow. That's usually what happens before they move you. Bill wheeled closer, gently taking the worn copy of Charlotte's Web from her hands. Lily, look at me. He waited until her eyes met his. I promised you we would figure this out together, and I meant it. I'm not giving up, so I need you not to give up either. Okay? She studied his face for a long moment, as if searching for evidence of deception. Finally, she nodded. Okay. Good. Now, how about we work on your science fair project? I have some ideas for improving the solar power demonstration. The distraction worked temporarily, but that night Bill found her sitting on the balcony long after her bedtime, staring at the city lights. Couldn't sleep? He asked, joining her. Lily shook her head. I keep thinking about all the places I've had to leave. The simple statement broke something in Bill's chest. He'd lost his family suddenly, catastrophically. Lily had experienced loss as a slow erosion. First her mother, then her home, then a series of temporary placements, each departure stripping away another layer of security. Tell me about them, he said quietly. About what? The places you've had to leave. The people. I want to know. So she did. In halting sentences that gradually gained momentum, Lily described the apartment she'd shared with her mother, the neighbor who used to babysit her, the first foster home where the mother was kind but the father drank too much, the second placement with too many children and not enough food, the brief stay with a grandmother who couldn't manage stairs anymore and sent her back. And then the streets, she concluded matter-of-factly, which wasn't so bad in summer, but winter was hard, even in San Diego. Bill listened, bearing witness to her journey. When she finished, he made a decision. I'm going to tell you something I haven't told anyone, he said. Something about the accident. Lily turned to him, fully attentive. Everyone thinks I've been grieving for my family, and I have been, but I've also been hiding from something else. Guilt. Bill's hands tightened on his wheelchair armrests. The night of the accident, I was supposed to be driving. Catherine took the wheel because I was on a business call I insisted couldn't wait. The admission hung in the night air between them. If I had been driving instead of taking that call, his voice trailed off. You think you could have prevented the accident? Lily asked. I don't know. Maybe. But I do know I wasn't fully present during their last hours. I was distracted, as I had been so many times before. Bill had never spoken these thoughts aloud, not even to Sarah during their counseling sessions. I failed them in life, and then I survived when they didn't. Lily considered this with the directness only children can manage. My mom told me something when she was sick, she said finally. She said that loving people means sometimes you hurt more, but the hurting is part of the loving, and you can't have one without maybe having the other too. Bill absorbed her words, marveling at how wisdom could come from such an unexpected source. Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable person. She was. Lily leaned against his wheelchair, a gesture of trust that moved him deeply. I think your wife and daughter were too. Yes, Bill agreed softly. They were. They sat in companionable silence until Lily began to doze. Bill carried her to bed, the transfer techniques from physical therapy serving a purpose beyond his own mobility. As he tucked her in, she stirred slightly. Bill, she murmured sleepily, I don't want to go with those people. I know, he said. Sleep now. We have work to do tomorrow. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Bill's attorney arrived early with updates on the legal situation, followed by Sarah with results from Lily's recent psychological evaluation. Marcus contributed his completed background investigation on the Vegas, confirming Bill's suspicions about their financial motivations. The doorbell rang as they were reviewing options. Bill tensed, expecting social services, but instead found Rosa Garcia on his doorstep, a covered dish in her hands. Mrs. Garcia, he greeted her, surprised. Please come in. I bring breakfast, she announced, bustling past him toward the kitchen. Lily tells me important meetings today. No one thinks clearly on empty stomach. The arrival of the bakery owner shifted the atmosphere, bringing warmth and practical energy to the strategic discussion. As they ate her delicious chilaquiles, Rosa shared stories about Lily's visits to her bakery, the math games they played, the child's efforts to help despite her circumstances. She count inventory faster than my calculator, Rosa said proudly, and never takes so much as stale roll without asking even when hungry. When the social worker finally arrived, she found not an individual, but a community ready to advocate for Lily. Bill presented their case methodically, the stable environment he provided, Lily's academic progress since coming to live with him, the questionable motives of the Vegas, and most importantly, Lily's own clearly stated preferences. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Harrison," Ms. Ortiz said when he finished, "but the system prioritizes family reunification when possible, even when family is a distant relation who showed no interest until media coverage suggested financial advantage." Bill's tone remained respectful but firm. "We're prepared to challenge this legally if necessary, but I'd prefer to find a solution that puts Lily's well-being first." The meeting continued for hours, with Sarah providing professional insights as a healthcare provider, and Rosa offering perspective as a long-time community member who had witnessed Lily's struggles firsthand. By afternoon, Miss Ortiz's initially rigid position had softened. "I'll need to conduct additional interviews and home visits," she said finally, "and the Vegas will have the opportunity to present their case to the judge. But," she added, seeing Lily's anxious expression, "I'll recommend continuing the current placement pending further evaluation." After she left, the adults exchanged cautiously optimistic glances. The battle wasn't won, but they'd gained valuable ground. "What happens now?" Lily asked, perceptive as always. "Now we continue building our case," Bill explained, "and we keep living our lives while the legal process works. And we celebrate small victories," Sarah added, producing a box of Lily's favorite cookies from her bag, like a positive recommendation from social services. Later, after the impromptu celebration dispersed, Bill found himself alone with Lily on the balcony again, watching the sunset paint the sky in vivid hues. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about more permanent arrangements." Lily looked up from the mathematics puzzle book Sarah had brought her. "What do you mean?" "I mean that regardless of what happens with the Vegas, I'd like to apply to become your legal guardian." Bill had considered this step for weeks, but hesitated to mention it until he was certain of his own motivations. Or possibly, someday, something more permanent than that. "You mean adoption?" Lily's voice was barely audible. "Eventually, yes. If that's something you might want." Bill turned his wheelchair to face her directly. "But only if you're comfortable with the idea. There's no pressure and no timeline." Lily was quiet for so long that Bill began to worry he'd overstepped. Then, in a sudden movement, she was hugging him fiercely, her small frame shaking with emotion. "I thought you were going to say you were tired of all the trouble," she confessed, her words muffled against his shoulder. "That maybe it would be easier if I just went with those people." "Lily Rodriguez," Bill said firmly, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "You are not trouble. You're the reason I got out of this apartment, the reason I'm fighting corruption at the foundation, the reason I'm building something new. Never doubt that." Her answering smile was like sunrise after the longest night. For the first time since meeting her, Bill felt something crystallize within him. Not just purpose, but hope. Not just responsibility, but possibility. The legal battle ahead would be challenging. The Vegas wouldn't relinquish their perceived opportunity easily, but William Harrison hadn't built an empire by shying away from challenges, especially not when the stakes were this meaningful. His phone chimed with a message from his attorney. Court date set for next Wednesday. Vegas filing emergency petition for temporary custody. Bill showed the message to Lily, committed to honesty even when difficult. "Round 2 begins," he said simply. "We'll be ready," she replied with surprising confidence. "We make a good team." Looking at her resolute expression, Bill couldn't help but agree. They did indeed make a good team, one neither of them had expected, but both now fought to preserve. The courthouse loomed imposingly against the clear July sky, its classical architecture at odds with the modern buildings surrounding it. Bill adjusted his tie, a gesture born of decades of corporate habit rather than vanity. Beside him, Lily sat unusually still in her new dress, her usual energy contained by the gravity of the occasion. "Remember what we discussed," Bill said quietly, as their attorney, Eleanor Winters, approached. "Answer honestly, speak clearly, and don't be afraid to say when you don't know something." Lily nodded, her small hand finding his. "I'm scared," she admitted. "That's perfectly normal," Bill assured her. "I'm a little scared too." This candid acknowledgement seemed to steady her more than false reassurance would have. She straightened her shoulders, a gesture so reminiscent of Catherine before important meetings that it made Bill's chest tighten. "The Vegas are already inside with their attorney," Eleanor reported, her expression professional but concerned. "They've brought character witnesses, a church pastor, their neighbors, even Lily's elementary school principal from Phoenix." "We have our own witnesses," Bill reminded her. And more importantly, we have facts. The courtroom was intimidating despite its modest size. Judge Harriet Chen, known for her straightforward approach to family court matters, observed the proceedings with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The Vegas sat on one side of the aisle, Janet in a conservative dress that screamed, "Responsible guardian," Robert beside her in what appeared to be his only suit. Bill positioned his wheelchair on the opposite side, with Lily, Eleanor, and their assembled supporters, Sarah, Marcus, Rosa, and Lily's teacher, Ms. Wilson. The division felt symbolic of the choice before the court: biological connection versus chosen family. The hearing began with procedural matters, establishing jurisdiction and reviewing the case's history. When the arguments proper began, the Vegas attorney painted a compelling picture of family reunification, highlighting Janet and Robert's stable marriage, their comfortable home in a good school district, and their willingness to provide a normal life for Lily. The implication that life with a paraplegic bachelor was somehow abnormal, hanging unspoken in the air. Furthermore, Your Honor, the attorney concluded, while Mr. Harrison's intentions may be admirable, we must consider the unusual circumstances of this arrangement. A wealthy man with no previous connection to the child, suddenly seeking guardianship after a lifetime with no parental experience. One must question the psychological foundations of such an interest following his recent personal tragedy. Bill felt rather than saw Sarah stiffen beside him at this insinuation. Eleanor rose immediately to object, but the damage was done, the seed of doubt planted. When their turn came, Eleanor methodically dismantled the Vegas arguments, presenting evidence of their financial difficulties predating their sudden interest in Lily, their complete absence during her mother's illness and aftermath, and most damaging, Robert's 2 DUI convictions carefully omitted from their filings. Your Honor, Eleanor said, this case ultimately hinges on what serves Lily's best interests. With Mr. Harrison, she has found stability after considerable trauma. Her academic performance has improved dramatically. She has consistent medical care for the first time in years. And most importantly, she has clearly and repeatedly expressed her preference to remain in her current placement. The judge listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but giving no indication of her leanings. When she called Lily to speak, the courtroom fell silent. Lily walked to the witness stand with remarkable composure for a 9-year-old. After being sworn in, a process she took with utmost seriousness, she answered the judge's questions directly, her clear voice carrying through the room. Lily, do you understand why we're here today? Judge Chen began. Yes, Your Honor. You're deciding where I should live. That's correct. How do you feel about living with Mr. Harrison? Lily considered the question carefully. At first, I was just happy to have a safe place, but now, she glanced at Bill, now it feels like home. He helps me with my math and science. He listens when I talk about my mum. He doesn't get mad when I wake up from bad dreams. And how would you feel about living with Mrs. and Mr. Vega? Lily's composure wavered slightly. I don't really know them. They talk about what they want to give me, but they never ask what I need. She straightened again. And they said I couldn't bring Charlotte's Web because it's too worn out and looks shabby. But it was the last present from my mum, and Ms. Amanda wrote in it for me. The simple statement revealed more about the Vegas priorities than hours of testimony could have. Janet shifted uncomfortably in her seat. When questioning concluded and Lily returned to her seat, Bill squeezed her hand, whispering, "You did perfectly." The testimony continued with expert witnesses, including Sarah, who spoke professionally about Lily's improved psychological well-being and the potential trauma of another displacement. Ms. Wilson detailed Lily's academic progress, while Rosa provided emotional testimony about the community support network that had formed around the child. The Vegas witnesses spoke of their church involvement and community standing, but under Eleanor's cross-examination, were forced to admit they had little direct knowledge of the couple's interactions with children. By late afternoon, final arguments concluded, and Judge Chen called a brief recess before delivering her ruling. In the hallway, Bill found himself face-to-face with Janet Vega. "This isn't over," she said quietly, her pleasant facade dropping now that they were away from the judge. "She belongs with family." "On that we agree," Bill replied evenly. "We simply differ on what constitutes family." Robert stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Look, Harrison, we can work something out. Visitation, financial arrangements, no need to drag this out." The naked calculation in his tone confirmed Bill's worst suspicions. "Lily isn't a business asset to be negotiated," he replied coldly. "She's a child who deserves stability and genuine care." Further conversation was prevented by the bailiff's call to return to the courtroom. As they reassembled, Bill noticed Lily watching the exchange with the hyper-awareness of children who have learned to read adult tensions for their own survival. Judge Chen entered and surveyed the courtroom before speaking. Family court cases are rarely simple, and this one presents particular complexities. The question before me is not about competing claims of love or biological connection, but about what arrangement best serves this child's welfare and development. She reviewed the evidence methodically, acknowledging valid points from both sides. Bill felt his tension mounting with each measured word, unable to read which way she was leaning. While I appreciate the Vegas' desire to connect with their relative, I find their timing and approach concerning. More importantly, I find compelling evidence that Lily Rodriguez has finally found stability and appropriate support in her current placement. Bill felt Lily's hand tighten in his as hope surged through them both. Therefore, I am denying the Vegas petition for custody and extending Mr. Harrison's temporary guardianship for a period of 6 months, during which time he may petition for permanent guardianship or adoption if appropriate. The Vegas may have supervised visitation if desired, to be arranged through family services. The rest of the judge's statements faded as relief washed over Bill. 6 months. Time to solidify their case, to demonstrate beyond any doubt that his home was where Lily belonged. Outside the courthouse, their small group celebrated quietly. Ms. Wilson had to return to school, but promised a proper celebration with Lily's classmates later. Rosa produced pastries seemingly from nowhere, distributing them with triumphant satisfaction. "We should get back," Bill said eventually, noticing Lily's fatigue despite her excitement. "It's been a long day." As Marcus helped him into the van, Bill spotted the Vegas watching from the courthouse steps. Janet's expression was unreadable, but Robert's barely concealed anger sent a chill through him. This victory, while significant, was only one battle in what might be a longer war. The following days brought a return to their routine, though with a new sense of security. Bill continued preparations for the New Horizons Foundation launch, involving Lily in age-appropriate aspects of the planning. The court-appointed social worker visited regularly, each positive report strengthening their position for the permanent guardianship hearing. One afternoon, as Bill reviewed architectural plans for the Foundation's new accessible building, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Harrison? This is Detective Morales, San Diego Police Department. We've been investigating the financial irregularities at Children's Future Foundation, and something's come up that might interest you." Bill listened with growing concern as the detective explained. During their investigation of Victoria Palmer's financial records, they discovered communications with Robert Vega dating back several months. Apparently, Vega approached Palmer after seeing news coverage of your donation. He was looking for information about you, specifically anything that might be useful for litigation. "Litigation?" Bill repeated, his mind racing. "What kind of litigation?" "That's unclear from the messages, but Palmer suggested using the child as leverage. There's mention of a significant settlement potential if handled correctly." The detective's disgust was evident in his tone. "We're still building the case, but I wanted to warn you. These people seem particularly focused on exploiting your situation." After thanking the detective, Bill sat motionless, processing this new information. The Vegas hadn't just been opportunistic. They'd been calculating from the beginning, coordinating with Palmer to exploit Lily for financial gain. His immediate impulse was to contact Eleanor and launch a counter-offensive. Instead, he took a deep breath, considering the broader implications. More legal battles meant more disruption for Lily, more stress when she was finally beginning to feel secure. "Everything okay?" Lily asked, entering his office with her math workbook. "You look worried." Bill made a split-second decision to shield her from this latest development. "Just foundation business," he said. "Complex problems often look concerning until you break them down into solvable parts. Like factoring polynomials," she suggested, displaying the work she'd been doing. "Exactly like that," Bill agreed, genuinely impressed by the advanced mathematics she was tackling. "You've made incredible progress. Ms. Bennett's been helping me. She says I could qualify for special advanced programs if I keep it up." Lily hesitated, then added, "She also said I should talk to you about the nightmares." Bill set aside the foundation plans. What nightmares? About being taken away? About having to leave here? Lily focused intently on her workbook, avoiding his eyes. They started after court. Bill wheeled closer, gently turning her to face him. "Lily, I want you to listen carefully. Judge Chen's ruling was very clear. You're staying here, with me, for at least 6 months, and we're working on making that permanent. The Vegas can't just take you. But what if they try again? What if they find a different judge who says yes?" The fear in her voice revealed how deeply the custody battle had affected her, despite their efforts to minimize her exposure to the stress. "Then we'll face that together," Bill promised. "But I need you to know something important. I will never stop fighting for you, not ever." The simple declaration seemed to reach something deep within her. Lily nodded, her expression clearing slightly. "Ms. Bennett says it's normal to worry after everything that's happened. She's teaching me breathing exercises for when it gets bad." "Sarah is very wise," Bill agreed, "and very kind to help." "She likes you," Lily stated with childlike directness. Likes you. Bill blinked, caught off guard by the observation. "I'm not sure that's—" "Adults are so slow sometimes," Lily sighed dramatically. "She looks at you the way Mrs. Garcia looks at her telenovelas when the main characters are being stupid about their feelings." Despite the serious conversation moments before, Bill found himself laughing at the unexpected comparison. "I'll take that under advisement," he said diplomatically. "Good." Lily returned to her mathematics with the satisfied air of someone who had successfully managed a difficult situation. "Because you need more people in your life, not just me and Marcus and Rosa." Bill watched her work, marveling at the resilience and wisdom housed in such a young person. The detective's warning still troubled him, but he felt newly resolved to protect the life they were building together, not just for Lily's sake, but for his own. That evening, as they shared dinner on the balcony, watching boats in the harbor catch the last golden rays of sunshine, Bill made a decision. "How would you feel about a small trip this weekend?" Lily looked up with interest. "What kind of trip?" "I own a cabin in the mountains near Julian. Nothing fancy, but it has an accessible entrance I had built years ago, and there's an apple orchard nearby." Bill hadn't visited the property since before the accident, another part of his life he'd abandoned to grief. "We could invite Sarah, Marcus, and Rosa. Make a little celebration of the court victory." "Can we make apple pie?" Lily asked, excitement building. "My mom and I used to make them every fall." "I'm sure Rosa would be delighted to teach us both," Bill said, already mentally arranging the logistics. Their weekend away from San Diego meant distance from the Vegas, from reminders of the custody battle, from the lingering shadows of the foundation scandal. As Lily enthusiastically planned activities for their mini-vacation, Bill felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: anticipation. Not just the strategic planning that had driven his business success, but genuine eagerness for experiences to come. The mountains would be good for both of them: fresh air, new perspectives, and most importantly, the chance to simply be a family without legal proceedings or foundation responsibilities hanging over them. Just for a weekend, they could focus on living rather than defending their right to be together. Bill sent a quick text to Marcus about security arrangements for the cabin, then another to Sarah asking if she was free to join them. Her response came almost immediately. "Wouldn't miss it. Need me to bring anything?" "Just yourself," he replied, smiling at Lily's knowing look from across the table. The weekend couldn't come soon enough. The late September sun bathed the New Horizons Foundation campus in golden light as final preparations for the grand opening reached their crescendo. Bill surveyed the accessible pathways, the state-of-the-art classrooms, and the specialized housing units with satisfaction tempered by healthy nervousness. 8 months of intensive work had transformed an abandoned community college into something revolutionary, a comprehensive support center for children in situations like Lily's. "The caterers are set up in the East Courtyard," Sarah reported, joining him on the observation deck. "And the first tour group is ready whenever you are." Bill nodded, making a final adjustment to his tie. "Where's Lily?" "Giving Rosa a private tour of the culinary education kitchen," Sarah smiled. "I believe they're already plotting curriculum improvements." The 8 months since their mountain weekend had brought changes neither of them could have anticipated. The cabin trip had indeed provided needed respite, but it had also cemented their unusual family unit. Sarah had officially joined the New Horizons leadership team as Director of Wellness Services, bringing her medical expertise and genuine compassion to the Foundation's approach. More surprisingly, Detective Morales' investigation had led to serious criminal charges against Victoria Palmer and Robert Beggar for conspiracy and attempted fraud. The evidence had been so compelling that Janet had withdrawn their custody petition entirely, moving to Oregon shortly thereafter without contacting Lily again. With that threat removed, Bill and Lily had settled into a rhythm of genuine family life. The permanent guardianship hearing had been a formality rather than a battle, with Judge Chen commenting on the remarkable progress both had made. The adoption process was now underway, proceeding smoothly toward finalization expected by Christmas. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, correctly reading his expression. "Terrified," Bill admitted with a wry smile. 200 people are about to tour this facility, including the mayor, 3 state representatives, and enough potential donors to fund operations for 5 years. "That's not what has you worried," Sarah said gently, taking his hand. Their relationship had evolved gradually, cautiously, with both acutely aware of building something that included Lily rather than competed with her needs. Bill sighed. "The children arrive Monday. 30 kids whose lives depend on us getting this right. We've assembled the best team possible," Sarah reminded him. "Educators, counselors, healthcare providers, everyone committed to the mission." "I know. It's just, you're thinking about Amanda," Sarah finished. "About whether she would approve." Bill nodded, emotion briefly overwhelming him. His daughter's passionate commitment to educational equity had often been a point of loving contention between them. While he had focused on building businesses, she had focused on building people. "She would have loved this place," he said finally. "She would have understood what we're trying to do here before I did." "She understood you better than you realize," came Lily's voice from the doorway. At 10, she carried herself with new confidence, though her eyes still held the watchfulness of a child who had known uncertainty. "I found something you should see before the ceremony." She approached, holding out a worn manila envelope. It was in that box of Amanda's things from her volunteer work, the one you couldn't bring yourself to open before. Bill accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a notebook, the cover decorated with Amanda's distinctive doodles. Opening it revealed pages of observations, sketches, and plans for what appeared to be a foundation remarkably similar to New Horizons. "She was planning this," Bill whispered, tracing his daughter's handwriting. "All those conversations about someday and when the time is right." "Look at the last page," Lily urged. There, dated just weeks before the accident, Amanda had written, "Finally talked to Dad about foundation idea, preliminary interest. Says we'll discuss details after Zurich conference. Mum thinks he'll come around completely once he sees the kids we could help. Start small, dream big, the Harrison family motto." Bill closed his eyes, memories washing over him. Amanda's excitement about the Zurich trip, her unusual insistence on having dinner together the night before, the conversation he'd only half attended while answering emails. The foundation hadn't been his idea at all. It had been Amanda's dream he was now bringing to life. "She knew you'd understand eventually," Lily said with simple certainty. "That's why she wanted me to have her book, I think. She saw something in me that reminded her of herself." Bill looked up at this extraordinary child who had somehow become his daughter in all but final paperwork. "She would have adored you," he said thickly. "Almost as much as I do." Sarah discreetly wiped away a tear before checking her watch. "It's almost time. The guests are arriving." Bill tucked Amanda's notebook carefully into his jacket pocket, close to his heart. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The grand opening ceremony exceeded even Bill's meticulous planning. Guests toured the facilities with genuine amazement, particularly impressed by the integrated approach combining education, housing, healthcare, and community support. Mayor Jackson delivered a glowing speech about innovative solutions to long-standing problems, while representatives from Child Welfare Services praised the model as potentially transformative. Throughout it all, Lily stayed close to Bill, occasionally adding her own insights to the tour group's questions. She had been instrumental in designing several aspects of the campus, insisting on details adults might have overlooked: quiet rooms for children overwhelmed by noise, communal kitchens where residents could prepare familiar foods, and an extensive library open day and night for those who found solace in books as she had. "And this," Bill explained as they entered the final area of the tour, "is the heart of New Horizons." The central courtyard featured a magnificent sculpture, a stylized tree with branches spreading protectively overhead. Embedded in its trunk and branches were hundreds of small mirrored tiles that caught and reflected light in constantly changing patterns. "The possibility tree," Lily explained to the assembled guests. "Every child who comes to New Horizons will add their own mirror piece, so the tree grows brighter with each new person. It symbolizes our core philosophy," Bill continued, "that every child contains infinite potential, needing only the right support and opportunity to reflect their unique light into the world." The poetic explanation, so unlike the businesslike efficiency that had once defined him, drew appreciative murmurs from the guests. Donors reached for checkbooks, officials exchanged impressed glances, reporters scribbled notes furiously. As the formal program concluded and guests mingled over refreshments, Bill found himself approached by a distinguished elderly gentleman he didn't immediately recognize. "Remarkable achievement, William," the man said, extending his hand. "Though I'm not surprised. You always did think bigger than the rest of us." Bill studied the familiar yet altered face. "Thomas?" "Thomas Rodriguez, the very same." The man smiled sadly. "Though considerably older and hopefully wiser than when you knew me." Bill's mind raced. Thomas Rodriguez had been his first major investor, the man who had believed in his technology when it was nothing but theoretical potential. They had parted ways acrimoniously 15 years ago over ethical disagreements about company direction. "What brings you here?" Bill asked carefully, acutely aware of the man's surname and its potential significance. "The foundation made headlines in the business journals," Thomas explained. "I've been following your work from afar for years, but when I saw the name Rodriguez associated with your new venture, I became curious." Bill felt a protective instinct surge within him. "Lily," he called gently to where she stood nearby with Sarah. "Could you join us for a moment?" She approached cautiously, assessing the stranger with her characteristic perceptiveness. "Lily, this is Mr. Thomas Rodriguez. He was an important colleague of mine many years ago." Bill watched her reaction carefully. "Mr. Rodriguez, this is Lily." Thomas stared at the child with unconcealed emotion. "How you have your father's eyes," he said softly. Carlos had that same thoughtful gaze. Lily's posture stiffened. "You knew my father?" "He was my son," Thomas replied simply. The revelation hung in the air between them. Bill instinctively moved his wheelchair closer to Lily, ready to end the conversation if it distressed her. "Why didn't you come before?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "When my mum got sick? When I was in foster care?" Thomas's shoulders slumped slightly. "I didn't know," he admitted. "Carlos and we hadn't spoken in many years. A foolish disagreement that hardened into estrangement. I was traveling abroad when your mother fell ill, and by the time I returned and tried to find Carlos," he spread his hands in a gesture of regret. "I didn't even know he had a daughter until I saw your story in the news." Bill studied his former mentor and partner carefully, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. Instead, he saw only genuine grief and regret in the old man's eyes. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," Bill suggested, noting curious glances from nearby guests. In Bill's office, with Sarah present for support, Thomas explained the full story. After their business falling out, Thomas had moved to Europe, while his son Carlos had rebelled against his father's corporate lifestyle, changing his name and cutting ties. By the time Thomas learned of his son's whereabouts, Carlos had already passed away in an accident before Lily was born. Maria Rodriguez, not knowing how to contact her partner's estranged father, had raised Lily alone until her illness. "I've spent the past 5 months trying to find you," Thomas told Lily, "not to disrupt your life, but simply to know you, to offer whatever support an old man can to his only grandchild." Bill watched Lily process this information, marveling at her composure. At her nod, he asked the question foremost in his mind. "What are your intentions, Thomas?" The elderly man smiled sadly. "Not to interfere with what you've built here, William. Anyone can see the bond between you. I'm simply asking for the chance to know my granddaughter, to be part of her life in whatever way is appropriate." "That would be Lily's decision," Bill said firmly. Lily considered for a long moment before speaking. "I'd like to know about my dad," she said finally, "and about your side of the family. But—" She moved to stand beside Bill's wheelchair, her hand resting on his shoulder. "This is my home now. Bill is going to adopt me." "As he should," Thomas nodded, understanding the unspoken boundaries. "I'm not looking to change that, only to add to the family you've found, if you'll allow it." The conversation continued cautiously, with Lily gradually warming to the grandfather she'd never known. When they eventually rejoined the reception, it was with tentative plans for future meetings and a delicate new understanding. "Are you okay?" Bill asked Lily quietly as Thomas spoke with Sarah across the room. "I think so," she replied. "It's weird, but also good, to know there's more family out there." She looked up at him seriously. "But it doesn't change anything between us." "No," Bill agreed, his throat tight with emotion. "Nothing could change that." As the event wound down and guests departed, Bill found himself on the observation deck again, watching the sunset paint the campus in vibrant colors. Sarah joined him, her presence a comfortable constant he'd come to rely on. "Quite a day," she remarked. "Foundation launch, mysterious grandfather appearance, emotional revelations. Never a dull moment with the Harrisons." "Soon to be official," Bill smiled, thinking of the adoption hearing scheduled for December. "Though I suspect life will never be entirely predictable again." "Would you want it to be?" Sarah asked, leaning against his wheelchair. Bill considered the question seriously. "No," he decided, "I wouldn't." A year ago, he had been contemplating surrender to grief, seeing no purpose in continuing a life so drastically altered. Now he found himself at the center of a growing web of relationships and responsibilities, each day bringing new challenges and unexpected joys. Lily appeared in the doorway, accompanied by Rosa and Marcus. "The caterers want to know what to do with the leftover food," she reported. "I suggested donating it to the shelter on Broadway." "Perfect solution," Bill approved, watching how naturally she had assumed her role as part of the foundation's heart. "Would you like to deliver it yourself?" Lily nodded eagerly. "I want to tell them about the programs, so they know they can come here if they need help." As the others headed off to arrange the donation, Sarah squeezed Bill's hand. "You've built something extraordinary here," she said softly. "Both the foundation and your family." "We've built it," Bill corrected. "All of us together." He glanced down at Amanda's notebook in his pocket. "Though I think Amanda laid the cornerstone long before we realized it." Later that evening, after the excitement had settled, Bill found Lily in the Foundation's library, examining the empty shelves with a critical eye. "We need more books," she declared without preamble, "especially fiction. Kids need stories to escape into when reality gets too hard." "We'll fill every shelf," Bill promised. "And you can help choose the titles." Lily nodded with satisfaction, then turned to face him directly. "Today was big," she said in her characteristic, understated way. "Good big, but still big." "Very big," Bill agreed. "How are you feeling about everything?" "About Thomas?" She considered this carefully. "I'm glad to know about my dad's family, but meeting him made me realize something important." "What's that?" "Family isn't just who you're born to, it's who chooses you and who you choose back." Her gaze, so serious and direct, reminded Bill fleetingly of Catherine. "You chose me when nobody else did." "Best decision I ever made," Bill said honestly. "Even better than starting your company." "Infinitely better." The answer came without hesitation. Lily smiled, satisfied with his response. "Then I think we're going to be okay." As they left the library, Lily chattering about book recommendations for the children arriving Monday, Bill reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate man contemplating surrender to a purposeful father, building both a family and a legacy. From a homeless child bearing soup to a confident young mathematician helping shape an organization that would change lives. The foundation would serve hundreds, perhaps thousands of children over the coming years. Its innovative model was already attracting attention from child welfare agencies across the country. But for Bill, its greatest achievement would always be the personal transformation it represented, the rediscovery of purpose, the reclamation of hope, the rebuilding of family from the ashes of loss. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky as they made their way to the waiting van. Monday would bring new challenges with the arrival of 30 children carrying their own stories of loss and resilience. But tonight, Bill felt ready for whatever came next. Not because he had all the answers, but because he had rediscovered the courage to face the questions. "Race you to the car," Lily challenged, already sprinting ahead. Bill engaged his wheelchair's motor, accelerating down the smooth pathway. "Not fair. You got a head start." Their laughter echoed across the courtyard, blending with the evening breeze, the sound of a family, improbable and unexpected, but absolutely real. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope William and Lily's journey has touched your heart as deeply as it has touched ours. Their story reminds us that family comes in many forms and that second chances can appear when we least expect them. For more emotionally captivating stories that explore the complexity of human connections, we've prepared a special playlist you'll find by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique narratives that illuminate the depth of the human experience. Don't miss our upcoming content, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what moments in William and Lily's journey resonated most with you.